Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at a scenario where Saudi Arabia forms an empire. Now Saudi Arabia, it is the 24th strongest country in the world. So it's stronger than countries like Algeria, and I think it's stronger than Thailand as well. But it's not stronger than countries like Vietnam or Taiwan or even Iran. Now, if Saudi Arabia were to form an empire in real life, it probably wouldn't be super stable because the Middle East has a lot of different diverse cultures and it just wouldn't mix well with the Saudi Arabian culture. This video is not meant to be taken seriously, it's just a what if scenario if Saudi Arabia were to go monarchist and form an empire. For this video, Saudi Arabia is going to be colored in red, so anything in red that you see is part of the Saudi Arabian Empire. So the first country that Saudi Arabia is going to go after is probably the country that I'd say is their weakest neighbor, and that is going to be Yemen. At this moment in time, I'm pretty sure Yemen is in a civil war, so there's not really going to be much pushback as the Saudi Arabians push in through the northeast and start going down, and they also make a push in through the northeast, and this is the northwest. After a couple weeks, the front line looks like this as they fully connect up their front line, and they make a naval landing down near over here. I'm pretty sure Yemen's capital is around this area somewhere. So they blitz up and take the capital, and soon after that, all Red Sea access is lost from Yemen. And since the civil war is happening, there's really not going to be much like fighting against Saudi Arabia. And soon enough, they just take the whole country. And here is New Saudi Arabia. Now, I also have to say that we're going to not include NATO, BRICS, anything like that, just to make it more fair for Saudi Arabia. And also, the rebels inside of Yemen, we're going to ignore those as well, just because they might cause trouble in Saudi Arabia, and we don't really have time for that. And now, who is Saudi Arabia gonna go after next? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by its toe. Go. Jordan. Now, much like Yemen, Jordan is not that strong of a country, and soon enough they find themselves split in half by the Saudi Arabians. The northern part surrenders fairly quickly, and it's just insanely fast. Encirclement is made, and they take over the whole country. And there is Saudi Arabia. And now they are going to declare war on a couple other countries, that being Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE. Yet again, I don't know how strong these countries are. I'm guessing the strongest would be the UAE or Kuwait, but they're going to focus a lot of their troops on Kuwait, and they're going to begin a offensive into Kuwait, almost knocking out the whole country in the first couple weeks. Qatar is just going to get wiped out immediately. They're not going to be able to do much. Yet again, I don't know how strong these countries are, but they're not. Qatar is not going to stand a chance. And since these countries are split up by Saudi Arabia, it's a little bit harder for them to send help towards each other if they are even working together. So soon enough, a big encirclement happens, and Saudi Arabia begins to push down into the UAE. This encirclement, a naval landing is made, and it turns into a full encirclement where they cannot leave, and they just keep getting squeezed down this peninsula even more. Breakthrough is made. The whole Kuwait manages to kick Saudi Arabia fully out of their territory, and now they push down and actually capture a lot of land in the process. And with this thing that happened with Kuwait, Saudi Arabia has to pull some troops off to go and protect their land, and this leads to a massive pushback by the UAE, recapturing these troops who were barely holding out, and they manages to hook up right here and start pushing through into Saudi Arabian territory. They get up to Qatar, and they managed to start reliberating the country, but there are still some Saudi Arabian troops along the border, along this tip of Qatar. So about 2 months into the war, this is what the front lines are going to look like. Saudi Arabia is going to think about maybe letting this war off and just signing a peace treaty. But then the Saudi Arabian leader gets assassinated and a new one comes into power. And this guy is very serious about expanding Saudi Arabia. And he is going to make some new adjustments to this war. The first thing he's going to do, he's going to get 50% of his army and place it along right here. So that way, if any Kuwaitian troops push up, they're going to be stopped by this massive front line. Another thing that he's going to do is arm this. He's going to put some navy around Qatar so he can supply his troops that are on the tip of it. And so that way he can make any naval advances he needs to in this area. But as they're arming these new areas, Kuwait is actually going to make a big advancement in the Caspian Sea, and Saudi Arabia is actually losing this war now because not only did they make this big advancement, but the UAE also connected up with this, so now they're supplying each other in this, and they also are pushing back the Saudi Arabians almost completely out of their territory, and actually they go into their territory a little bit as well. And they actually even managed to take back Qatar. So now, but Saudi Arabia is thinking there's no way these three countries are not getting support. And then they kill, some Saudi Arabian troops kill a UAE troop. And they realize that Iran is supplying them. So Saudi Arabia is going to do the logical thing, tell them to stop. Iran is going to say no. So Saudi Arabia is going to go up to Turkmenistan and Afghanistan and say, I'll pay you money if you will invade Iran. And they're both going to go, all right, bet. So they're going to invade Iran, taking Iran's eyes off of this area. I'm not going to show this war because this is a Saudi Arabian video, but just know that these two are teaming up against him. With supplies not going in, Saudi Arabia, the troops finally arrive and they manage to push back almost entirely. They actually managed to fully push back the the UAE, and almost fully push back Kuwait, but they're still managing to hold out in some areas. And now Qatar is taken, and they start going back into the UAE. And you know those little navy, boom. And now the UAE's gone. It's just Qatar. And now the navy from down here is heading that way. So now Qatar is kind of freaking out and it's like, hey, I'll give you all your land back, and they give it all back. But the thing is, they don't take the peace. They invade. Naval landing, and this war is finally over. And now with the annexation of all these nations, I think you can expect who's gonna get attacked next, and that's Oman. Oman was not expecting this. They watched Saudi Arabia's expansion, but they thought they had good terms. But apparently no one is friends with Saudi Arabia. Not even Oman. Naval landing is made, and Oman is not being supplied by anyone, so they're going to put up much less of a fight against Saudi Arabia. They get cut in half. This part surrenders, and soon Oman just kind of surrenders. Well, Saudi Arabia just united this whole peninsula. Where are they going to go now? They're going to go Syria. And while they're going to go Syria, they're also going to go Lebanon, Palestine, and Israel. Now, Israel is not going to be getting supplied by the freaking America, because this war would not be fair if they did join this war. So almost immediately we have Palestine being pretty much taken over. So with Saudi Arabia taking over pretty much Palestine, they're going to cut across, cutting Israel in half. Nukes are not going to be used in this because that would not be fair for Saudi Arabia for Israel to fire off their nukes and pretty much completely destroy Arabia. So Saudi Arabia makes a move into Syria, the now almost completely just anarchy Syria. But we do still see some fighting. Israel makes a push. They arm this side, so they're not really going to be pushed into. They actually get pretty far down the Red Sea. And we also see Syria making a slight invasion through this little gap they have. Lebanon manages to push back and actually recapture all of Israel and Palestine. And they push through. But Syria, they're not really... It's not going good for Syria. And they make kind of a big bulge in the center of it. It's like a fist punch in the air. And they also manage to kick Syria out and invade into the land. With just this giant bulge, they manage to cut the country in half, making the deserty side surrender. And it's now pretty much just this front line, and Saudi Arabia is now pushing back against Israel and starts an invasion into Israel. Palestine gets taken over. Israel yet again gets cut in half. Lebanon falls. Syria is kind of cooked, and their capital gets taken. And now it's just Israel. Israel's gonna try to ask for peace, but they're just gonna get taken by Saudi Arabia. And wow, they expanded a lot in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia now has contact with Turkey and the Mediterranean Sea, which is going to give them a lot more trade opportunities with countries like Greece, Italy, France, Spain, the Baltics, Morocco, a lot more of Africa. So this is going good for them so far. And now they're next. With Saudi Arabia now being in the top 5 strongest countries in the world, they are now going to be able to easily push into Iraq, which is probably among some of the 45th, 50 strongest countries. They cut off their sea access really quickly, and Iraq is kind of freaking out, and they know they're next to be taken all over, which they're completely right. Saudi Arabia cuts them in half. This northern part surrenders, which is a big blow. And Saudi Arabia doesn't surrender, but they just get taken over within a month. And now Saudi Arabia doesn't have many places they can go. They're pretty much surrounded by, well, top 10, top 20, top 30 countries. And so anywhere they go is going to be a challenge, but they are going to pick on what they think is going to be, what is their weakest neighbor, Egypt. They invade it into the Suez Canal and take it all over. And Egypt is going to start crying inside because they really need the Suez Canal. But there's not much they can do as their whole coast is taken, their capital is taken, and they start going down the Nile River, which is not good for Egypt. And they're wondering how Saudi Arabia got so strong very quickly. And I go down to Egypt and I say, it's because it's just, the Arabians are just them. I'm sorry. Soon, Egypt is now pretty much just desert, and they surrender over to Saudi Arabia to hopefully still be a country after the peace treaty. So what they're going to do is they're going to take pretty much all of the livable parts. I mean, the Nile is going to run through this puppet Egypt a little bit. Mainly, mostly, actually. I think it runs through it mostly, but Arabia is now having their sights set on their next weakest neighbor, Libya. Libya starts crying inside because they're calling Arabia a copier of the Ottoman Empire. And you know what? You know what Arabia is going to say? At least I'm not the one getting invaded. As all of Libya's coastline gets taken, and the Libyan president or whatever, is now calling them a copy of the Roman Empire. And this makes Arabia mad because they don't like the Italians. They don't like these weird Italian people. So they start just doing awful things, almost as bad as the World War II atrocities, but it's not as bad, and the world is going to look at Arabia and not really be that happy with them. But it doesn't matter because I choose what happens, and them now Arabia is going to invade in through their puppet Egypt. Libya was not expecting this, and there's really been no pushback for this whole war. These provinces start just seceding away, and Libya starts crying. Arabia is freeing the slaves of Libya, and tears of joy happen as Libya capitulates. And this is the peace treaty of Libya. Um, I see where they got Ottoman Empire from because they're kind of just taking over all their coast, and now both of their puppets are united. And this is where the peak of the Arabian Empire, Saudi Arabian Empire, will meet. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more content like this. I will see you again in another video. Goodbye.